Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and in this video I like to discuss not simply how it seems evident Sunak has no strategy for the election, but how it's essentially impossible for him to even have one. So quite what's happening about the election from Sunak's point of view very much depends on who you believe. Last week, the Daily Express talked about a plan to deploy 3 prime ministers for the Tories. Rishi Sunak, of course, is the incumbent, David Cameron in the southwest, and Boris Johnson in the north of England. Now, after hyping up this plan, the Express then did have to admit that this plan doesn't actually exist because it is contingent on Rishi Sunak asking Boris Johnson to help out and then Boris Johnson agreeing. I don't know how likely either of those is, let alone the combination of them, but the entire concept is fueled on a delusion that Boris Johnson would attract votes in 2024 like he did in 2019. He absolutely would not, for several reasons. First, people were voting for Johnson and his vision in 2019. This time, they're going to be asked to vote for the person whom the Tory media claims trashed Johnson's vision. Second, many were voting for Brexit, either to leave the EU itself or at least stop the constant arguments about it. Those who just wanted to leave the EU, they've already got what they want. They don't need to vote for you anymore. Nothing further needs doing. Those who just wanted the constant arguments to stop, well, they haven't been getting that from the Conservatives either. So no point voting for them for either reason. Third, some just ran towards Johnson away from Corbyn, not an issue this election. Fourth, Boris Johnson has caused a great deal of hurt amongst those who were particularly affected by his COVID rules at a time when Johnson was not even following them himself. And further, when he was caught not following them himself, seemed to suggest that anyone who followed them in the way everyone understood them to mean was a mug. Oh, the rules did actually mean that. It didn't mean you couldn't have parties. I'm sorry if you thought that's what it meant. You're just stupid. I mean, I haven't seen any polling on this specific issue, but it is entirely possible that Johnson would lose more votes than he gains for the Conservatives. You can imagine the reaction of those who do still approve of him. Oh, I like you, Boris, but it's not you we're voting for, is it? No. Be great for his ego, but doesn't actually help the Conservatives. I mean, if they think that Boris Johnson is the answer, I don't think they understand the question. Apart from anything else, this notion of chasing after the 2019 coalition of Tory voters is a completely dead duck. It was a one-time thing. It was never sustainable. Retaining the red wall not only relied on Labour not sorting themselves out, but also pissing off their core supporters in, say, the south of England. As for the idea of deploying David Cameron to the southwest, oh, he made these great gains in 2015, you see. Yeah, that's not because people liked Cameron. It's because Lib Dem voters abandoned their party as a result of the policy Cameron pursued. It was a classic case of the Tories benefiting from the unpopularity of their own policy. It's a little bit like, when, someone's giving an injection to the dog and the dog bites you and you're just trying to comfort it. It's like Lib Dem voters turned against the Lib Dem candidates because you supported austerity. And ironically, that allowed the Conservative candidates to win. So you basically rewarded the Tories. But it's not like David Cameron's popular in that part of the country. I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm sure Johnson and Cameron would both be much more accomplished on the campaign trail than Sunak, technically better, but neither's popular. But the fact that so many Tory MPs think that this is a good idea just demonstrates to me that it's not possible to get them to focus on what's real anymore. Perhaps it has suited Sunak in the past that his MPs are simply unaware of what's going on with public attitudes because he has not lifted a finger to change them in favour of the party he was supposed to be saving. And these are the Tory MPs who actually want to do something to help the election. There are plenty others who've given up, some literally so, they're standing down. Some are working on replacements for after the election. They're focusing now on, who's going to replace Sunak? They've forgotten all about the election. We're hearing that some One Nation Tories, or these are the ones we generally view as the least insane, are talking positively about Priti Patel. Priti Patel? Not only are her views very extreme, but the one thing which stopped her being the worst Home Secretary we've had in modern times was Suella Braverman taking over. She was incompetent, she was extreme. If the One Nation Tories, I'm not suggesting the whole caucus is, but if even some One Nation Tories are coalescing around her, is that like they've given up on the idea of a sensible leader in the foreseeable future? Are they just saying, look, we're going to end up with a crazy leader, can we pick the least crazy? And if that is the case, is Priti Patel really the least crazy? That's pretty grim. And part of the reasoning for backing her is that she's a Boris Johnson loyalist, so we'll bring that support with them. So even they're thinking that Boris Johnson is somehow a unifying factor within the party. I mean, she's also avoided association with the disastrous administration of both Truss and Sunak, I suppose. So there's that in her favour, by not serving in either government. All of the other credible leadership challengers will have served in one or both of those governments. I mean, I have described her as a realistic option for replacing Sunak myself, but I did not expect to see her get support from the sort of relatively moderate MPs. But regardless, the fact that so many Tory MPs are spending time working out how to arrange the best possible post-election future for their party means that they're not really spending time on the election itself to be valuable. Then you have those MPs who may be foolish enough to listen to gobshites in the media, who for some reason they regard. Matt Goodwin has said that Conservatives need to make a big, bold offer on immigration. Now, anyone with even a passing interest in the detailed polling over the last few years, and you'd have thought Matt Goodwin should be such a person, knows that it is immigration which has gotten the Tories in the mess they're in. No longer in the EU, they are bereft of others to blame, although they're trying to anyway. But all talking about it has done for them is expose massive failures by their own standards and allowed Reform UK to hive off huge numbers of voters. The idea that the Conservatives should double down further on the single biggest strategic error they've made this Parliament seems suboptimal. Yet Tory MPs will consider people like him and other associated boneheads like David Frost to have something useful to say. I mean, these were the same people who insisted that they needed tax cuts to win their seat all last year. All these Tory MPs coming out. We need tax cuts. Give us tax cuts and I can actually fight for my seat. They got their tax cuts. It's not made a blind bit of improvement in the polls for them. So it wouldn't surprise me if they thought that similar dead ends were worth pursuing as well. Then we see the Times reporting this weekend that even those close to Sunak think he's going to face a confidence vote after the local elections. Maybe these are the same ones who thought he should have called a general election for the same day. If not, why not? The article repeats this conflicting thought about what to do about it. You know, they can either call an immediate general election rather than risk being deposed, or go through the confidence vote on the assumption that he will win it and limp on into the autumn general election. I suppose from Sunak's point of view, both would work. Ordinarily, you'd say it was madness to continue on for another half a year after an unconvincing confidence vote win. But this will do far more damage to the Conservative MPs who wish to still be MPs after the election than it will the leader who just wanted to grab as much cash as he could and disappear to more lucrative work afterwards. But even these can't really focus on a general election strategy because they don't even know when it is. Some of them think, well, we might do it in June. Oh, we might do it in October. We might do it in November. The very people closest to Sunak. The focus should be on how the public are perceiving the party. But instead, they're completely focused on how their own colleagues perceive the party as they are the most urgent concern. But it means continuing to completely ignore the voters. And so if there are any Tory MPs left who would like to focus on the election, you know, the ones who haven't stood down, who aren't interested in the next leader until after the election, who don't think Boris Johnson is the answer, who aren't wasting time worrying about the party imploding. Just those who think, hey, it's election year, maybe we should think about the election. They're basically on their own and in quite a small group. At the weekend, I discussed this, at the weekend after the shocking news about Jeffrey Donaldson, Sammy Wilson, who you might have thought would use the situation to push new arguments within his party, was actually saying, no, we've got an election this year. That's what we need to focus on. Basically, the Conservatives are more out of touch with the basics than the DUP because they seem less conscious of the election or the need to do anything about it. That is where we are. That That's why it's not only that they don't have a strategy, they're incapable of implementing one if presented to them. But there we are. Those are my thoughts. If you enjoyed the video, please subscribe for further content and click the like button. You can also sign up for memberships if you'd like to support the channel further. Thanks for watching, and until next time, I'll see you later.